I want to bring in retired New York State Supreme Court Judge Jill Konviser and former Manhattan ADA, retired New York State criminal term judge Dianne Kiesel. Both of them were laughing at the description of that room. But Dianne, you know this process well. Before July 11th, Donald Trump gives that interview. And then what happens to that information? How is it used?
That information gets put into a file that is confidential, that is given to the defense lawyer, the prosecutor, and the judge. And that is part of an entire picture of the defendant that the judge gets to see and rely upon during sentencing.
And that includes, right, the defense and prosecution making arguments essentially to the judge about what they think the appropriate sentence would be. Here's what both sides have said so far, just in the last several hours. Let's take a listen.
Putting aside the fact he was president of the United States, the conduct that we're talking about is 7, 8 years old, 9 years old. He's a grandfather, a husband, a father. He should not go to prison. I don't know what the district attorney is going to do.
Do you plan to request a prison sentence for this conviction? That Donald Trump's multiple violations of the gag order that was in place should factor into that request at all?
The judge scheduled a sentencing for July 11th. We will speak in court in that time.
No surprise, I don't think, Dianne, on either of those counts. But what does the judge use to weigh? Obviously, do those two arguments weigh heavily? How much does the trial transcript? How much might, for example, the fact that he got into some trouble with the judge for breaking the gag order 10 times?
Everything is on the table when it comes to sentencing. It is a look at Donald Trump's entire life. It's a look at any bad acts he's ever committed, even things that were not presented at trial.
So E. Jean Carroll?
E. Jean Carroll can come into the picture. I think the way in which he has ripped apart the criminal justice system every single day he's been on trial here, the judge can consider all of it. In addition, I assume there will be a lot of letters sent to the court, because that happens all the time with regular defendants or non-famous defendants, if you will, in which people will say he's, you know, the savior of our country. You know, he's a wonderful man. Other people will say he tried to tear apart democracy on when he left office. So all of that comes into play.
Jill, what about other extraneous issues? The fact that he is a candidate running for office, I mean, they can decide with sentencing, they can decide when to impose the sentence, that it can be delayed until after the election, for instance, or suspended pending the appeal. But how much does all of that, the political context, and you have a judge who, despite all of these attacks, has tried to ignore them to the extent possible, has been very calm and very modestly mannered in the courtroom. How personal can he be when he makes the ultimate decision after the recommendation as to what the sentence is?
Well, I'll say a few things. First of all, if you think probation is dingy, you should see what Rikers Island looks like, because I've visited a number of times. But to answer your question specifically, and Dianne Kiesel is right, that sentencing is something that it's very broad and vast. There are no rules or guidelines. You take in anything that is relevant about a defendant's particular background and life. So that would include that with which you're asking. But I don't know that the judge should say, I'm going to postpone this indefinitely. The defendant has a constitutional right to a speedy sentence. And if he isn't sentenced, you'll probably hear that argument that it wasn't timely. So he certainly does have the right to take in everything into consideration. I certainly think he can and will take into consideration the way he has handled this system and his press conferences, the things he said today. If I were his lawyer, I would tell him to stand down. I don't know if he listens to his lawyer, but that's what I would do.
No, Todd Blanche this morning was on with the Today Show, and he said that Donald Trump had every right to it. It was a good strategy to rail against the process, and that he would not go and tell him to pull back in any way.
Right. I would say that's a big mistake, because sentencing is the one time you, as a judge, get an opportunity to say, who is this person in front of me? Has he been remorseful? Has he looked at the system? Has he shown some respect? He's done none of those things. I would consider that.
But Alan Weisselberg is serving time in jail right now. Donald Trump talked about him today at the press conference, called him a good man, said it was totally unfair. What is it? Take the fact that Donald Trump is a former president of the United States and is running again out of the equation. What's the difference between what Alan Weisselberg did and what Donald Trump did? Because Alan Weisselberg has served time.
Well, yes, he has. They were similarly situated defendants. They're co-conspirators, if you would. But that's where sentencing comes in. You look at who the person is. So if you're looking at Alan Weisselberg and what he didn't go to trial. He took a plea. The judge, who has now sat through an entire trial and has a chance to observe the defendant and the manner in which he's handled this, which is, quite frankly, un-American, and tear down the institutions, that's something he can consider. That wasn't what he had with Weisselberg.
Do you think a nonviolent first offender would still get a possible jail?
But also
sentence?
one who has never suggested remorse, which is something we often see.
I was going to say, who has not been remorseful, who's attacked the system, and where both Michael Cohen, slightly different charges, and Alan Weisselberg have served time. Would you recommend jail, Bob, to both?
That's a fair question, and I'm going to tell you that there's always balancing in every decision a judge makes, and the balance will be here too. But the judge in this case has to look at this defendant. Sure, he will look at what happened with the others, but they're not exactly situated the same. And so would I consider jail? Yes, I think the law requires me to consider jail. Non-jail, fine, conditional discharge, unconditional discharge, intermittent sentence, which is weekends, probation, split sentence with probation, or state prison. Those are all things that are on the table that will be considered.
Can't go golfing this weekend. Got to go to jail.
Diane, do you agree?
Oh, absolutely. I'm just glad I'm not Juan Rashan for the next 6 weeks. It's a terrible, tough decision. And just like the world's been watching him for all these many months, the world is going to be watching what he does here. And I think he's going to be widely criticized from one side or another, no matter what he does.
Sentencing is the hardest thing for a judge. In any case. This one, yes. In every single case, this is no different. Judge Merchan has done this, has sentenced defendants for 15 years with grace and aplomb constitutionally. He will do it again in this case.
What we will never know is how many nights' sleep he loses in the process. Tough decision. Diane Kiesel, Jill Konviser, thank you both so much throughout this trial. Really, it's been great having both of you.